Hello and welcome to part 3 of this review. And in this part I want to start by covering powers. Now I know that this falls more under the tutorial section, but you know, that whole tutorial thing, that's long enough already, and there's quite a bit I have to say about powers that I figured it'd be a good idea to just make it its own section entirely. So anyway, powers are yet another thing in Absolver that barely get explained. They're extra abilities that you have access to that you can use, and you get powers from beating up the marked ones, and you use powers by gaining tension in your shards. Now wait a minute, what am I talking about? Veterans, you already know this stuff, but the people who don't, let me explain. You may have noticed these stones that are kind of attached to the back of your character that light up when you do certain things. Well, those are called your shards, and you need to fill those up with tension, you know, so that they light up. And once you have enough of them lit up, depending on the power, you can spend those shards to use that power by pressing left or right on the D-pad. Now the game tells you this, but once again only through the tips section, so not really. Again, this is one of the many things that should have actually been like a tutorial, like the stance switching thing. But yeah, like you're just kind of given this, right? Like already, you start with 2 shards and you gain more by leveling up, eventually reaching the max of 5. But like, they don't. You start at the beginning of the game with two shards, right? They don't exactly explain what that is at the beginning until you happen to get to the tip section, and that's if you look at it. So like, it's not obvious what it's really doing there, those shards, right? I mean, sure, you have like a little icon on the bottom left of the screen that has like because you start with heal, so you see that icon for heal, and if you see it's mapped to like one of the directional buttons, right? And I'm sure you could put 2 and 2 together after a little bit, but still, that should have been explained from at least some point in the beginning, alright? Not just through the tip section, alright? You know, so anyway, like I mentioned earlier, you use powers by filling up your shards, and you fill up your shards by performing certain actions such as getting hit or using your style ability. I don't recommend getting hit, so get good at using your style ability. Alright? Blocking and attacking do not fill up the shards, so no turtling. And also, well, attacking kinda does fill up your shards. Like, I'm not sure what the exact amount is, but it's probably very little, because sometimes when I'm close to filling up a shard and I land an attack, sometimes it'll just fill up all the way from that. So not sure what the deal is from that, but you mainly want to be using your style ability to gain shards, and you can increase the amount of how much you fill up the shards, the tension. You can increase the amount of tension you gain from performing either by getting hit or performing your style ability successfully by increasing your will stat. Now I will say that you don't necessarily need a very high will stat to like fill up your shards all that quickly, and like, not unless you just really want to spam powers, but like, they're not, hardly anybody really uses powers that much. I mean, I guess if you're new, you're gonna be relying on them somewhat, but like, once you get to a certain level, powers they're not really that useful, alright? Most people prefer to fight without powers, but yeah, like, even still, like, you don't need a really high will stat. Like, my will stat is at like 6. That's like the base level for Forsaken, and I can just get like 3 parries to fill up a full shard. So yeah, it's not that important. as for powers, there's two ways kind of to unlock powers. You either defeat the marked ones in the open world to unlock powers when you first start, or you can just buy them from the essence shop. There are 6 powers that you get from the marked ones, you know. So since there are 6 marked ones, you get 6 powers from the marked ones. And there are 4 powers that you can buy from the essence shop. All right, let's start with heal. Heal like gives you like a sort of ghost health that gets cancelled out when you get hit, but like it gives you a tiny amount of ghost health, right? That refills over time, and you can just get more out of it when you attack. So it encourages aggression. It doesn't encourage like turtling or whatever. It's not something you can pop and just turtle or whatever. Like you can, but you're not gonna get very much out of it. Shockwave pushes the opponent back, and like depending on how close they are and if they block it right, it pushes them back a certain amount. And if you time it right, you can get stamina. It'll block an attack, and you'll get stamina back from blocking that attack. So yeah, pretty useful. Next power is gravity, I believe, but it's not really worth using at all, really. Not unless you just want to, you know, force kill somebody. So like this power is borderline useless. I mean, it says it's increases the opponent's weight for like 5 seconds, but that hardly makes a difference. It really does. Like that power probably needs an overhaul to make it more useful, because it's pretty much worthless. There's no real point to just using it. All right, you can't even use it to like interrupt somebody, you know, and like interrupt their string. It's too slow. So like there's not really any point to using it, honestly. Like if make it that power needs an overhaul. Like make it to where you can, instead of like increasing the weight so that there's stamina recovery is slower, because that hardly makes a difference really. You know, it make it to where like it not just slows the opponent down and makes their stamina take longer to recover, but also like make it pull them in. You know, like how that one boss from the downfall dungeons has that one ability to just pull you in whenever you get too far. Make it like that, you know? We already have a power that pushes people away. You know, why not have a power that pulls them in addition to lowering their speed, you know? Make it, you know, like make it last a bit longer too, just to make sure it's extra worth it, you know? Just it doesn't need to be to the degree that boss pulls you in, but like, you know, make it could be worthwhile to just make it, you know, give it more utility, you know, since some people just like to really space you out, you know. So yeah. The next power is silenced, and it's only really useful against other people and certain NPCs such as the mini bosses, the marked ones, and the actual boss NPCs and whatnot. Since they use their powers, they're the only NPCs that really use their powers. But like, it's really helpful against people who are really adamant about using their powers. You just, you know, once you get the restart, you have to be proactive though, because once you can't just really pop it out in the middle of a fight unless you're feeling real ballsy. It has quite a bit of startup, so you have to be really proactive and keep reapplying it, you know. But for 3 shards, keeps them from using their power for 20 seconds, so you can just, if they're really over-reliant on their powers, they're gonna have a really hard time not being able to use their powers against someone who has silence, you know. But you have to be proactive. Next is Earthquake, and this is pretty much the best power in the game. Like, you stun them, and you're able to get like pretty much a free hit, assuming that the hit you land is decently fast, like a 12 frame, you know. I think it only confirms like 12 frame attacks. if it hits. But if the opponent blocks it, then you're negative. Like they can act before you. Good power to bust out when you're being pressured. It's really kind of cheap too. It's got the absorb property, so you can, if you get hit while you're using it, you get ghost health. So you can just gain that health back, which is really kind of stupid in my opinion, but like, I don't know, it's so quick, and like, at least, I don't know, like, just, it should have been armored instead of instead of having the absorb property, where you can just take hits and gain the ghost health. It should have been armored instead, but that's just my opinion. All right, like at least give it armor if you're not gonna slow it down. All right, that's my really only gripe with that power, honestly. Now this next power, shield, falls into a kind of a weird category. It has the absorb property, so you can just kind of bust it out like a earthquake, and it gives you like level 1 resistance to weak attacks, meaning that weak attacks don't stun you. But like, there aren't very many attacks like that, so it's kind of useless. But at least it's helpful for getting stamina back, I guess, if you're low on stamina. But like when you bust it out, just be careful because you're not guaranteed to get your turn back. An actual useless power though is exhaust. Like, it's just not worth using, you know. It falls into the same category as gravity. Like, it's yet another power with the absorb property, so you're not guaranteed to take your turn back since it does no stun. It's supposed to make your opponent like take stamina damage, waste more stamina. Like, they take more stamina damage, or they waste more stamina doing attacks, you know, attacking you or moving, or like dodging around or whatever. But like, it's only for 5 seconds, so, and it's just not worth it for 3 shards. For like, make it 2 shards. Maybe increase the exhaust duration from like 5 seconds to 10 seconds, and maybe you got a pretty okay-ish power. Although kind of a niche one, but you know, it's just not really worth using as it is currently. It's pretty much useless. Alright, so the next power, we're getting into the powers that you can buy from the Essence shop. Starting with Snatcher. Now Snatcher, it's a pretty niche power. It basically, if your opponent pulls out a weapon, you can just snatch it away from them at the cost of 2 shards. I mean, that's pretty much it. Not much use for it, really. But you know, it does what it's supposed to do. I've seen, since it has a really quick startup, I've seen people try to use it as a way to interrupt people when they're attacking you. So I mean, I guess you could use it for that if you really want to. I'd be careful with that though. But I mean, yeah, it's a good power. It's just kind of niche, you know. I don't know if it's worth 2 shards, but I'd imagine it'd be really annoying if it was only 1 shard. If it was only a 1 shard ability. So for 2 shards, I guess it's fine. It's a good ability. I think it's fine. Really niche, but it's fine. It does what it needs to do. And the next power is Sharp Impact, which gives you cut damage on all your attacks. And basically, what cut damage does is that it basically chips. Like, you chip your opponent guard out, so like you can still do damage even with their guarding, right? Chip damage, basically. And it also increases the damage of all your attacks by a bit, just a little bit, I think. But yeah, like, for a 2 sharp power, it's really kind of too good, because it lasts for 20 seconds and it's got a quick startup too. Like, that duration needs to be put down to like half or something, because that's a little too good. It's another one of those cheap powers. Like, it's earthquake level cheap, if you ask me. You know, like, if you're gonna make it last that long, it needs to be 3 shards. But like, nah, it's not. It's a 2 shard power. It just needs its duration cut down to half. Anyway, the next power is Shadow Avoid. another power you can buy from the Essence Shop. And you have to really time this one. It's 3 shards, but it slows your opponent down by like down to 2 seconds. So you can pretty much, it gives you plenty of time to hit them with a really heavy attack. You can get a really heavy punish with that, but you have to get it down right. You have to time it right. The timing is a bit strict. So high risk, high reward power. Some people have a problem with it, like they think it's kind of unbalanced, but to me it's fine. But I don't know, like that's just my opinion. Yeah, it works good. It does what it's supposed to do. Really risky, but totally worth it in my opinion. And the last power from the Essence Shop is Unbreakable. Now Unbreakable is a power that you activate, and it basically just gives you pretty much infinite super armor. Like you can't be broken at all. So for as long as it's active, you get, for like, it's like 5 seconds I believe, you can just kind of do whatever, wail on your opponent without worrying about getting hit, well, being stunned. You can still get hit, you still take damage, and you can actually still die. Like I've had people bust out Unbreakable on me even when they were low health. Like Unbreakable, you know what, anything that gives you armor, right, just don't use it when you have low health, okay? Because you will still take damage and you will die still. Alright, so don't do that. Alright, but yeah, I mean, it does what it's supposed to do. So yeah, I think that's all the powers. Yeah, that's all the powers. That's what all they do. Just, they're fine for the most part. Well, most of them are fine. Some of them suck, and some of them need to be toned down some. Alright, or adjusted some. But yeah, that will, I think, conclude the power section of this review. Alright, I'd like to start off this PvP online section with 2 features that Absolver lacks, which is map selection and spectator modes / like replay mode. Now these 2 features aren't exactly 100% necessary, but I mean, that spectator mode kind of thing kinda is, well, these are more like the points I'm about to make about these are more like, they're merely suggestions, honestly. They're not like must-haves, absolute necessary, but it's more of a strong suggestion on my part, especially on the spectator mode / replay mode bit, but I'm gonna get to that later in a minute. For now, I'm just gonna start with the less important one, the map selection. Now, most fighting games let you select which stage you want to play on, right? Like some games let you, like say Guilty Gear. Guilty Gear lets you set which stage you want to play on, and depending on who you match with, whoever's in the first player slot will have their map chosen. And some games like Mortal Kombat, both players get to choose what map they want to play on, and then the game randomly cycles between the 2 until it lands on one. And you know, some games, you know, it just you know, it picks a player to just randomly decide or something. I don't know, there might be a setting that chooses which player gets to choose what. Like it might flip randomly, like one player gets to choose what map for this match, and depending on, like, if it takes turns or whoever wins or loses, the next player gets to choose a map, something like that. Absolver, there's no way to select a map in this game, a stage, once you boot up Combat Trials, which is the game's PvP mode. And you know, it's not that big of a deal, honestly. Like most maps in this game are perfectly fine. I will say the swamp map will start lagging after a while. I've heard it's because it's the water that lags it, that causes it to lag, you know. Because like I've noticed this too, because I would be going a few matches with somebody on that map, right? And then slowly but surely, like when you start fighting in the middle of the map, like after you go a few matches, like let's say 4 or 5, every time you start fighting in the middle of the map where the water is, it starts lagging, and every time you move further away from it, it starts getting smoother again. So that's a bit of an issue, but like as long as you don't fight on that map, it's not too bad. It's usually fine. And I will say the cross map though is kinda pushing it, honestly, kinda. Like, you see, the thing is with that map is it's like it's a little too small for a game like this, because you don't really have a way to maneuver around that well. I mean, you have manual dodge, but well, it's manual dodge. But let's take Virtua Fighter for example, right? Virtua Fighter has like open stages where you can get knocked off, right? But you see the difference with between Absolver and that game is that you have ways to maneuver around your opponent. Like, you always have an option to maneuver around, you know, like to evade attacks. You got the sidestep. Even when you get knocked down, you can roll away from the edges and stuff. You know, you better position yourself when you're on your back foot, right? In Absolver, you don't really have that unless you play certain fighting styles, but like, and there's like one really obnoxious fighting style that's really good for dancing your opponent off the stage, but I'll get to that in a minute. Well, later on, maybe in the next part when I cover the styles. But like when you're on your back foot in Absolver, like that cross map stage is a little too small. Like in a Virtua Fighter, those open stages where you can get wrung out, those are big wide open stages, right? Or at least they're long, and they're long, and if like they have some narrow stages, but they're long, and it's not that easy to, even then it's still not that easy to get wrung out. But like Absolver, it's pretty easy to push somebody out, and manual dodge is, again, it's not that great, but it's not supposed to be. I'd rather it be mediocre than be really good, you know. But honestly, that's just a nitpick, really. The main reason, though, I mean, like the cross map it's fine. It serves its purpose. It's for those players that like that extra edge to their gameplay. Not everybody enjoys that, you know, because it feels especially cheap since you can't maneuver around very well when it comes to being on the defense. All right, but like the main reason I'm really making this point is because of that goddamned library map. Bro, let me tell you something. The library map is the worst stage in the game. It's so poorly designed for a fighting game. I'm sorry, but it has to be said. I've already voiced my opinion on this before, but I'm gonna do it again. That map needs to be overhauled or just straight up removed from the game. Like, cause if there's not gonna be a map selection, that map needs to change. Something about that map being in the game needs to change, because it's just bad. Like, you've got these little, like, first of all, you start too far away from your opponent, right? Like on these stairs, and these stairs are at quite an incline that make it uncomfortable to even fight on. So most people end up just fighting on one of those four, like, little, I don't know, areas where it's like a bit, like you have like a small bubble, you know, of room to just actually fight on, but it's like each of them are connected to like a little walkway as well. So like it's easy to get, like if you end up fighting on those little paths there to those little pockets of actual space where it's actually somewhat suitable to fight on, then you chances are you're gonna get pushed up against the wall where you can barely see, because the camera just flips out and it can't just that camera, that's another thing. I'm gonna get to that in a minute. But yeah, the camera just kind of struggles there, and those 4 pocket bubbles areas open like somewhat small areas where that you can actually kind of fight on. I mean, you just barely have enough space to just really take in, like comfortably fight and take in your surroundings and shit, because like those areas, they're smaller than the cross map. All right, like the cross map gives you more space to fight than those small areas there, you know, those 4 areas with the bookcases and shit. The cross map gives you a lot more space actually than this. And you know, another thing is that like if you're not standing in a certain spot on this stage, right, your opponent will spawn like the opponent will spawn in the opposite sort of area. So like if you're in the opposite side of you, so if you're on the bottom side, your opponent will spawn on the top side, like at the top of the stairs, and they have to run back down to you. Or if you're on the top side and you get knocked out and they're not standing in a certain spot, right? Like there's a certain spot you can stand in where your opponent will actually spawn across from you, and it's only on the top floor, right? But if you're not standing in that spot and you get knocked out, you're gonna be spawned on the opposite side of the map, where you have at the bottom of the stairs if they're on the top floor, assuming they're not standing in that spot, and you just have to run all the way back up there. That's not fun, all right? That's not fun. Like I don't want to have to keep doing this every time I get knocked out, or every time I knock my opponent out, and we're just so happen to not be standing in the correct spot where on this top floor where your opponent will spawn across from you if you knock them out. Okay. Like whose idea was that? Whose idea was this whole map? It's a bad idea. Like I'm sorry, it should have been implemented better, made better, like built better. You know, like. Because this is frustrating. This is maddening. This is super annoying, bro. Like I know there's this one spot. Like I mentioned it earlier. Like there's this one spot. I keep trying to run over to, but my opponent keeps spawning in before I can get to it. So he has to keep running back up to the stairs or something. And even then, he keeps going in the opposite direction of the spot I want him to go to. But like, anyway. Like that spot I ran to earlier, just not before I have to run back over to him. Like that's the spot you need to stand in order for your opponent to spawn across from you in this spot here, so you don't have to take all that much time of running back up the stairs. Okay, it's just this whole map, the way it functions, is just super annoying. All right, and the thing about those stairs, right, is just in a fighting game, you want your stages to be flat, open and flat, right? Because in this, like, look at this camera, right? Like, it's pretty easy to just get boxed into a corner on this map, in one of these spaces here. All right. So it's not open. It's not a whole lot of space, right? You got this big ass incline of a stairway, right? This is just bad design. It's not fun to fight on. It's super annoying. You want your fighting game stages to be mostly flat. Like if you're gonna have a stage with an incline, right? You don't want it to be at this angle here. Like what is this? Like a 45 degree angle? Like I don't know, maybe 30 degrees. Like you don't want, like if you're gonna have an incline on your stage, right? If you want people to fight on an incline, it should be at a very low incline, like maybe 5, 10 degrees at most. I don't know, man, but like, as I don't really see very many fighting games with inclines on their stages. I know one of the previous virtual fighting games had inclines on their stages, but it was at a very low incline. So the point I'm trying to make is that this stage here, like, if there's not gonna be a map select, then this stage needs to there's something about this stage that needs to change in the game, alright? Like, either it gets removed or it gets completely overhauled and, like, made differently or something. Because it's not fun to fight on, alright? Like, this fighting on this map just frustrates me to no end, because it's just, ugh, you know? So yeah, that's the whole reason I'm even making this point about the map selecting it to begin with. It's just this stage, man. Like, this stage is just, it's terrible. It's objectively terrible. And if you think otherwise, you fight me, okay? You're wrong, okay? You're just straight up wrong. All right, you are objectively wrong. Like, don't even try to fight me, all right? Because I'll destroy you. But yeah, this stage, it's bad, man. It something about it and being in the game just needs to change, all right? Either it's not in the game or it just changes. Like, you redo this whole map right here, all right? All right. So the next suggestion I was making was the spectator mode. I think, while I'm not quite sure if it's absolutely necessary, I think there's some great value to be had in Absolver having a spectator mode / replay mode. Now, I think it would benefit Absolver immensely if it had this feature in the game. So, because, like, you know, it would be a helpful way to just, you know, study how to get better, you know, for people of all skill levels, you know, not just new players. And also, you know, just to, you know, I mean, I know we can just upload videos and shit, or just stream, you know, but, like, it'd be pretty convenient for Absolver to have this feature. You know, it'd be a pretty good way to study what other people do, how they fight, you know. You know, it's just for, really, I think it's for the sake of convenience, and it's almost a crime to not have one, honestly. Not have this feature for a fighting game. Because quite a lot of fighting games do have this feature today. I know older fighting games didn't really, but that's because they were old. But, like, yeah, like, give us, I mean, if you can, I think it's possible. It might not be absolutely necessary. I mean, there's definitely more important things that need to be worked on in this game, for sure. But, like, I can see that, like, the groundwork is kind of already made for, like, a spectator mode, you know, because with the way you can invite people and then, like, do private matches with them, you know. Like, I think you can just, like, if you just add, like, an extra slot there for combat trials mode in the combat trials menu there for, like, spectating, right? So, like, when you party up with 3 people, like, you can just kind of, like, you know, cycle through. You can just, like, the spectating player, the third person, could, like, keep on spectating, and I think it's also opens the door for, like, cycling through players matching with each other in a party of 3. So, like, you know, winner stays, loser leaves, or, you know, they you know, take turns taking places fighting the champion of that party, right? of that, you know, like a sort of king of the hill kind of situation or whatever, you know. And like replay mode, like, you know, DBFZ is a great example of this. It's got like, you know, this like area where it's like a TV, right? You can just kind of sort through various replays, you know, like it's a whole replay kind of network channel thing that they got where you can just see various people's replays, you know. They got them sorted out in specific ways and shit, and you know, in like as for like spectating matches, like you got this ring match mechanic where you just load up a ring room and anybody can join, or you can set a password, right, and people will join. And you know, you got people facing off and people waiting to face off and people just spectating for that, you know. So like, I think that would really be very beneficial for Absolver. Again, I don't think it's absolutely necessary, although I strongly suggest it, I strongly recommend it. I think it'll be very helpful for Absolver to have this feature, you know. So yeah, it's like, it's almost a crime that it doesn't, because it's, you know, fighting games, you know, that's kind of people want to watch that stuff, you know. And also, like, keep in mind that not everybody is interested in making YouTube videos and streaming. So like, sometimes, you know, a lot of really good high level top players, they just be playing the game and shit. So, you know, like, give people a chance to study them as well, you know. But yeah, I think that's all I've got to say about that. And wow, the length of this video already. I mean, no, I'm not going to keep going. I'm going to continue this section into the next part, because this video is getting too long already. And I don't want to make like an almost hour-long video like I did in the first part. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut it off here. I'll continue the PvP online section and into the next part. And before I close this off, I do want to say one more thing. The thing is, I need to make a correction, because I need to correct an error that I made in the previous part. In part 2, I said that the game doesn't tell you about schools, but that is wrong. I was mistaken. The game does tell you about schools. It's just that when I press on the school option in the pause menu, it takes me directly to my school details. And I assume it just defaults to that because I'm already in a school. But if you're not in a school, I think, like, if you go one tab over, you will see that it tells you about how you can learn new attacks and new styles if you're not in the school, and it gives you some options to go find one or make your own if you're at the appropriate level. So that was my bad. All right, that was my bad. All right, that was an oversight on my part. I didn't really notice that until I just happened to notice it. I just really looked at it, because I'm just so used to seeing that it defaults to my school details. But you know, even then, despite that tab being there for people who aren't in a school, right? I imagine it defaults to that tab for them. Like, people still start new characters thinking that they don't have a way to learn new styles on their first character. So that's, I mean, what can you do, man? What can you do? Like, this is game design is hard. All right, I understand that. Like, I truly do. I didn't, you know, when oh well, I'm not gonna even go into that. But like, you always have to be constantly coaching the players in the right direction sometimes, depending on the game that you're making. Like, I think, I'm not quite sure, honestly, but I think that maybe having like a short little description summary of what each option is doing when you pull up the pause menu and you just hover over them, you know, when you light them up and you go over to them. Like, I think having this little short summary off to the side describing each one would be beneficial, but even then, I don't know. Some people just, because people sometimes they just don't be paying enough attention. Like, that's how it is sometimes. Like, it's no one's fault, really. That's just kind of how it be sometimes. So the only thing you can do is just do your best to, just put stuff on the screen that shows them stuff, okay? Like words, little tutorial video things, that kind of thing. Maybe that'll help work more for that situation specifically. I mean, it's right there, literally, when you bring up the pause menu. There's no other menus here you have to go through. Like, it's not like the tip menu where you have to go through a bunch of menus just to bring it up. It's literally right there. I mean, honestly, I'm surprised at how people are able to just miss stuff like that. But, sometimes it just be like that. Oh, and also, yeah, I'm working on that beeping thing that you hear occasionally. Like, yeah, I took a day off. Like, after that, I finished part 2. I took a day off, and then, next day, when I was going to work on this part, I realized I needed more footage for some things, and then that took a whole day, and then I woke up this morning and then realized I didn't have the right batteries to replace the old ones for my fire alarm. So, look, I'm still working on it, okay? Just bear with me. Forgive all the occasional beeps that you hear in the background. But anyway, yeah. That's gonna do it for this part. Stay tuned for part 4, which should be really soon, since I still have. It's still pretty early in the day. I think I can get that out today, maybe in a few hours. So yeah, stay tuned for that, and I'll see you in the next one.